Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter World Iceborne. So today we're going to be answering the question, which one is my favorite monster in Monster Hunter World Iceborne? This is a question that I get a lot in my YouTube comment section or whenever I stream Monster Hunter or even on social media sometimes, and I instantly answer, so it's not like it's a big secret. I think most people know that my favorite monster is the seething Bazelgeuse. But today I figured I would elaborate a little bit more on that response and explain to you guys why the seething Bazelgeuse is such a cool monster for me personally. And there's more to it than just the monster design, the armor design. It also has to do with a little bit with the story that I kind of have with this monster ever since I started playing Monster Hunter World. So the footage you guys are watching is because yesterday I got a bit of a bout of nostalgia and I felt like playing full burst Gunlands. And I just went into the Guiding Lands and started playing full burst with a build that I was just trying to do a full burst build, but like you need so many different skills to properly make a full burst build, and considering all of the stuff that we got from friggin' Fatalis, that I'm not entirely sure that this build's any good, but I was still able to beat the crap out of Seething Bazelgeuse, even though if I will say that, goddamn, I hadn't really played with Wormstake Blast in a while, because you guys know when the Fatalis Gunlands came out, all I did was like friggin' Slaplands, and I did not miss playing with Wormstake. Jesus Christ, I missed my Wormstake so many goddamn times on this first hunt that I just wanted to like, dude, I quit, let me go back and change weapons. But in the end, I persevered, right? So anyway, what's the story between me and Seething Bazelgeuse? Well, it actually begins with the original Bazelgeuse. So I really like the concept that Capcom did for Monster Hunter, that Bazelgeuse would actually invade you on your hunts and he would try to like mess with you while you're trying to hunt high rank monsters. I thought that was really interesting, particularly because if you guys remember my attitude initially, and my attitude even now whenever I'm leveling up through a Monster Hunter game, is for starters, we don't really use dung pods. I know that it's more efficient to use dung pods and to separate monsters and, you know, do all of that stuff, and I know that a lot of people when they're playing Monster Hunter, we gotta be as efficient as possible, we gotta end this hunt as fast as possible, we gotta go fast and all of that. But me personally, I never really thought too much about that, particularly as you are progressing through the game. It was always more about what's the most fun thing to do, and using dung pots to separate monsters that could potentially damage each other and even do turf wars didn't really seem like it was an interesting thing. So I never really used dung pods in Monster Hunter World. I did use it in the previous games because the monsters don't hurt each other as much, and when you get two monsters in the same area, it becomes kind of really hard to fight. But in World, having two or maybe even three monsters in the same area, I think it's much more manageable. Obviously, depending on the weapon that you're playing, depending on the skill composition that you have, and depending on the type of run that you're trying to do. But as you're progressing through the game, I think it's very manageable to have multiple monsters on the field and to tackle them that way. And then on top of that, we also don't really use traps and capture. We always try to go for the kill. And I know you can get more rewards if you capture, it's more efficient if you capture, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but killing is more fun to me, and therefore we kill them and then we carve them. So it's just that simple. So with those two things in mind, when I was progressing through the original Monster Hunter, whenever a Bazelgeuse showed up, it was kind of like a bit of an event, because, you know, you would show up, you would dive bomb, and you would just like, it was this crazy thing. Like the first time that I saw it, I was like, what the hell is happening? Like it just comes out of nowhere and just like, boom, like right on top of whatever the hell you happen to be hunting. He slams you, slams the other monster. And at the time that he starts invading you, he's considerably more powerful than you are, which is, again, one of those things that kind of adds an additional challenge, because you can't just turn around and beat the crap out of him. I mean, I probably could now that I have more experience with the game. But back then, you know, it was kind of a challenge because, oh, this monster showed up and he's like creating all kinds of havoc. It's going to be a little bit annoying to have to deal with this, right? So with the attitude that I had, which is whenever a monster interrupted my hunt, I'd go out of my way to hunt it, right? Like if I was hunting a Baroth and an Anjanath showed up, a lot of the times I would end up killing the Anjanath before I even killed the Baroth, because, you know, it's a funny thing to do while you're live streaming. And it's also, it was also just fun to hunt multiple monsters. Like back then, everything was still so new that it always felt great. And there was this one hunt that I remember, because initially I didn't go after Bazelgeuse the first couple of times that he showed up, right? I didn't go after him because it would be just way too hard and you wouldn't even get decent materials out of it. But there was this one time, I don't even remember what other monster I was hunting, but I was hunting something in Valley of Defilement. And those of you that were on Twitch for those live streams, you guys probably remember this one time. I was playing Charge Blade. And I was hunting something in Valley of Defilement, and friggin' Bazelgeuse shows up, and he was just being the biggest possible asshole imaginable. Like every time the other monster would move areas, he would move areas exactly to the same spot and kept dive bombing at me, and just like, and then the other monster would move again, and he would move again, and they would always be the two on the same spot. And I just got to one point, okay, that's it. That's the last time. And I just went in and I started chasing him. And I was going after Bazelgeuse, and everybody was laughing their asses off on stream, right? Because like, this isn't even your target. You're not gonna get any good materials for it. And he's pretty hard. You don't even know if you're gonna do it. And eventually, I think he carded me 3 times and I ended up failing the quest. But it was a really fun thing to have happened, just like organically, that he just happened to be so annoying that I just ended up chasing after him and spamming him with everything that I had, and I wasn't even able to kill him because, quite simply, I didn't have enough damage, and at the time I didn't even have enough experience on how to actually play the Charge Blade. All I really did was super amped elemental discharge spam. That was pretty much it. So that already kind of put Bazelgeuse really up there as one of my favorite monsters in the game, because that situation happened. But ultimately, what ended up happening during Monster Hunter World was that Bazelgeuse was a very annoying fight. It was kind of a frustrating fight in a way, because sure, he's got really good hit zones, particularly if you hit him in the head. But if you're caught off guard with a heavy weapon against a tempered Bazelgeuse in the base game of Monster Hunter, before, you know, we had the power creep and the exponential power growth that we had with Iceborne, or even just the power creep of getting to the end game and getting stuff like the behemoth armor and whatnot. Before you got all that, before we were as powerful as we were at the end game, he could actually one-shot you if you were unlucky enough to be caught with, say, rock steady mantle in the middle of 2 pine cones. Sometimes even 1 pine cone was enough to just take a player out. And so back then, I don't think that Bazelgeuse was my favorite monster, simply because, you know, a lot of times I would go to fight him and I would just get one-shot, and that's not particularly fun. Technically speaking, it's not a one-shot, because most of the times it would be like 2 pine cones exploding at the same time. But since they explode at the same time, they're clustered together. It's very easy to just look at it. It's like, oh, I got one shot. But then with the changes that they've made for Monster Hunter World Iceborne, I thought that the monster was a lot more interesting, because for one, he didn't just spam the flight animation, which was also easily abusable back in base Monster Hunter World, because you could just like flash him out of the sky. Because back then you could flash anything out of the sky repeatedly. But even if you flashed them out of the sky in base Monster Hunter World before you had like good armor, he could like drop the pine cones and still kill you, which was kind of cool. But when we first fight Seething Bazelgeuse in Iceborne, that's when I was like, oh wow, this fight is a lot cooler now, because for starters, you have different types of pine cones. Pine cones at the time were also not nearly as deadly as they were back in Monster Hunter World, so it was a little bit more manageable to deal with the pine cone spam without dying. But then you also had the different types of pine cones, the cluster pine cones that would explode and then more of them show up, and then the fact that he does that crazy AoE nuke that he does, where he just like jumps into the air, starts spinning around, and purple pine cones go everywhere and start growing in the ground. You're like, what the hell is going on? And like, one of the clear areas that becomes a little bit clear that almost looks like it's a safe spot is right in the middle, which is where he dive bombs down and does like a nuclear explosion, like bam! Like that was also a really cool move. And it just became a much more fun fight without him constantly flying over. What was disappointing with Iceborne is that basically he stopped being an invading monster, right? He was not coming into your hunts and trying to ruin everything. I think only really Savage, Deviljho kind of took that role pretty much. I don't remember if there was another invading monster in Iceborne. It's been a while since I actually played Iceborne, but all I can think about is Savage Joe when it comes to invasions. It became a much more fun fight of a monster that I kind of like already really liked. Then to top things off, if you remember in Monster Hunter World, if you wanted to have like a full set, that was like actually like a full set of armor that was the same set, and it was very much usable across a wide variety of weapons. Seething Bazelgeuse was actually one of the best sets for that type of stuff, at least in my opinion. Because back then, at the very start, you didn't really have what's it called? Layered. I mean, you did have layered armor. If you pre-ordered the game, you would have the layered, the samurai set or whatever. But at the very start, you didn't have actual layered armor that you would use. So whenever you did a mixed set, your character looked like it would in the mixed set. And Bazelgeuse was actually a very solid set for a wide variety of my builds. Like if you go back and you watch a lot of my thumbnails, you'll see a lot of times I'd be wearing the Bazelgeuse helmet because it was really good for a lot of different builds, because I used to play Gunlance. I still pretty much just play Gunlance, Charge Blade, SNS, all of that stuff. And it was really good for at least, I remember, because I used to really like earplugs, right? And one of the best things to do is like get his head and his belt for earplugs. It was really good. So you'd see a lot of my thumbnails just have like Bazelgeuse helmet on them because it was such a good set. So he had a really good set, and it was a set that in my opinion also looked pretty good. But then with the introduction of Iceborne, like Seething Bazelgeuse Alpha is basically my favorite looking set in the whole game. Like, so not only I actually really liked the fight of the monster itself, but the look of his set was also my favorite. Like, it looked amazing. And then on top of it, you guys know the reason why I play Gunlance, right? I play Gunlance because I like explosions. I like glorious explosions. I like wyvern fire. I like full burst. I like long shelling. I just like seeing the explosions happen, right? Blast is my favorite element. So having a monster that is basically just like explosions, that's it. That's his thing. His thing is explosions. He explodes. And then on top of it, his fight got improved so much, and I already had like all of this story with Bazelgeuse when I started playing Monster Hunter, just kind of really solidified Seething Bazelgeuse as my favorite monster in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. But what is your favorite monster? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you did not enjoy this video, hit the dislike button. Feedback is important. I'll see you guys on the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.